March 14th, 1958, 9:47 a.m. Suite 912, the Sands Hotel, Las Vegas, Nevada. Frank Sinatra has been awake since 6. This is not unusual. He is, contrary to the public mythology of the late-night chairman, a man who sleeps in compressed, efficient intervals and who does his clearest thinking in the hours before the city fully wakes up. He has been reading. He has had 2 cups of coffee. He has made 1 phone call to his daughter Nancy, who is in Los Angeles and who has a cold, and who told him, with the specific 7-year-old authority that Nancy Sinatra Jr. deploys when she wants her father to stop worrying, that she is fine, Papa, she is fine. He is in his bathrobe. He is reading the Wall Street Journal. He is, by every available measure, a man who is exactly where he wants to be, and feels exactly as settled as a man who has just come off 3 nights of shows can feel. The telephone rings at 9:47 a.m. He picks it up. The voice on the other end belongs to Martin Green, not the attorney Martin Frank, who handles his legal affairs in Los Angeles, but the other Martin, the one who handles numbers. Martin Green, CPA, of Green, Holloway and Associates, the accounting firm that has managed Frank Sinatra's financial affairs since 1954, the firm that handles the Reprise Records accounts, the Essex Productions accounts, the Barton Music Publishing accounts, the personal investment portfolio, the real estate holdings in Palm Springs and Los Angeles and New York, and the one entity that is the spine of everything, the umbrella holding company, Sinatra Enterprises, LLC, through which all other entities flow. Martin Green's voice, on the telephone at 9:47 a.m., has a quality that Frank Sinatra has never heard from him before. Martin Green's voice is afraid. "Frank, I need to see you today." "Martin, today, Frank. It's, I need you to be sitting down." "I am sitting down. I found something." A pause. In that pause, Frank Sinatra, who has survived enough to recognize the texture of bad news arriving, does not ask what. He asks, how bad? Martin Green is 61 years old. He has been an accountant for 37 years. He has delivered bad news to wealthy clients before. Market losses, tax liabilities, cash flow problems. He has the professional language for all of those things. He does not have professional language for this. $2,140,000, Martin Green says. Approximately, over 26 months. The silence on Sinatra's end of the line is not the silence of shock. It is a different kind. The silence of a man who is, in real time, reorganizing what he thought he knew about the past 26 months. "Who?" he says. Martin Green says a name. The name is Leonard Sachs. And the silence that follows the name is the silence of a man who has just learned something about himself, about his judgment, about his trust, about the specific vulnerability that comes with building something real and then needing other people to help you protect it. Leonard Sachs is 44 years old. He has been Frank Sinatra's personal financial manager, not the accounting firm, but the internal man, the one who sits inside the organization and manages the day-to-day flow, for 4 years. He is the man Sinatra refers people to when they have financial questions about his business. He is the man who sits at a desk in the Essex Productions office on Wilshire Boulevard, and who has, for 4 years, been the first and last person to touch every dollar that moves through Frank Sinatra's financial world. He is the man who has, over 26 months, moved $2,140,000 of those dollars to places they were not supposed to go. "I'm coming to Los Angeles," Sinatra says. "Today, Frank. Book a room at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Conference room, not a suite." 3 o'clock. He hangs up. He sits in his bathrobe in Suite 912 of the Sands Hotel, and he looks at the Wall Street Journal open on his lap, and he puts it down. He picks it up again. He puts it down again. He gets up. He goes to the window. He looks at Las Vegas, which is bright and indifferent and exactly itself in the March morning light. He thinks for 4 minutes. Then he goes to get dressed. The 36 minutes begin at 3 p.m. To understand what Leonard Sachs did, and what Frank Sinatra is going to do about it in exactly 36 minutes, you must first understand what Leonard Sachs was inside the organization. He was not merely an accountant. Accountants are external. They review, they audit, they certify. Martin Green is an accountant. Leonard Sachs was something different. He was the financial executor, the man who translated strategic decisions into financial movements. When Sinatra decided to invest in a real estate development in Palm Springs, it was Sachs who structured the transaction. When Reprise Records needed to manage its cash flow between distribution payments, it was Sachs who moved the money. When Essex Productions paid its crew, it was Sachs who approved the payroll. He had, in 4 years, become what every financial insider becomes if they are any good at their job and their employer trusts them: invisible. The money moved when it was supposed to move. The reports showed what they were supposed to show. The quarterly reviews conducted by Martin Green's firm showed a healthy enterprise. They showed a healthy enterprise because Leonard Sachs, who understood the architecture of Sinatra's financial world better than anyone except Sinatra himself, had built a second parallel architecture, smaller, quieter, entirely hidden, through which $2,140,000 had moved, in carefully calibrated amounts spread over 26 months, into accounts that did not belong to Frank Sinatra. The accounts belonged to a woman named Carolyn DeVito, who was Leonard Sachs's mistress, and to a shell company called Pacific Meridian Holdings, which was Leonard Sachs's creation, and to a bank in the Bahamas where the money arrived and became, in the language of international financial architecture, difficult to reach. This is what Martin Green found at 7:20 a.m. on March 14, 1958, when a discrepancy in a Reprise Records quarterly reconciliation sent him back through 18 months of transaction records and revealed, with the particular horror of an accountant finding something that should not exist, the full shape of what had been done. He called Frank Sinatra at 9:47 a.m. because he needed 27 minutes to be absolutely certain he was not wrong before he made the call. He was not wrong. Frank Sinatra boards a flight to Los Angeles at 11:15 a.m. He is in a window seat. He does not speak to anyone during the flight. He reads nothing. He looks out the window at the Nevada and California desert passing beneath him, and he thinks. He is thinking about the mathematics. Not the $2 million. The $2 million is a number, and numbers can be recovered, and Sinatra is 42 years old, with a functioning financial enterprise and the specific resources of a man who has been building things for 20 years. The $2 million is not what he is thinking about. He is thinking about 26 months. He is thinking about every conversation he had with Leonard Sachs in 26 months, every document he signed that Sachs reviewed, every financial decision he made that Sachs executed. He is thinking about the specific nature of the trust, not the professional trust, but the personal kind, the kind that makes you stop double-checking because you believe you do not need to, and where, exactly, he allowed that trust to suspend his judgment. He is also thinking about something else, something that most people in his position at this moment would not yet be thinking about. He is thinking about what Leonard Sachs did with the money, not where it went. He knows that much already from Martin Green. He is thinking about why. He is thinking about the specific shape of a man who spends 4 years inside someone else's financial world and decides to take from it. He is thinking about what that decision looks like from the inside. The first transaction, small enough to be ignorable, and then the second, and the gradual escalation of a man who has discovered that the thing he feared, getting caught, is not happening. He is thinking about this because he needs to understand it completely before 3 o'clock. Because at 3 o'clock he is going to walk into a conference room at the Beverly Hills Hotel and do something that requires him to know exactly what he is dealing with. Not anger. Not the hot, punishing anger of a man who has been robbed and wants to destroy the person who robbed him. Something colder. The mathematics. At 1:30 p.m., before going to the Beverly Hills Hotel, Sinatra makes 2 phone calls from a phone booth at LAX. The first is to his attorney, Milton Rudin, who is the architect of the legal structure of Sinatra's businesses and who has been his primary counsel since 1955. Rudin is, among his many qualities, a man who responds to crises with the specific composure of someone who has been paid to be composed in crises. He listens to Sinatra's summary. He asks 3 precise questions. He says, "Don't touch anything in the accounts. Don't confront him before I get there." "I'm confronting him at 3, Sinatra says. "Frank, 3 o'clock, Beverly Hills Hotel, conference room. I need you there at 2:50. A pause. "What are you going to do?" "Something legal," Sinatra says, "but not nice." The second call is to a man named Nathan Sabin, a name that does not appear in any public account of Frank Sinatra's life, and which is being used here in place of the actual name, because the actual name is not the point and has never been the point. Nathan Sabin is a forensic accountant who works primarily for people who need to know things about money that other people have tried to hide. He is not a PI, he is not a lawyer. He is a mathematician of financial architecture, a man who can look at a structure built to conceal and see, with professional clarity, both the concealment and the structure beneath it. He charges accordingly. He is very good. "Nathan, I need a full forensic account of all transactions through Sinatra Enterprises LLC, Essex Productions, Reprise Records, and Barton Music for the past 26 months. I need it documented in a format that is admissible in a federal proceeding. I need it by 5 p.m. today." A pause. "Frank, that's 8 hours of—" "I know what it is. I'll have Martin Green's preliminary findings sent to you within the hour." "Nathan, yeah. Everything documented, every transaction, every routing number, every account that received funds, complete chain." "You going criminal with this?" "I'm going complete with this," Sinatra says. "What happens after complete is a separate conversation." He hangs up. He gets in a cab. He goes to the Beverly Hills Hotel. 3 p.m. Beverly Hills Hotel, Conference Room B. The room is small and functional. A hotel conference room, not particularly glamorous, with a rectangular table, 8 chairs, and windows that look out at the hotel's garden. Milton Rudin is already there when Sinatra arrives, along with Martin Green, who is carrying a briefcase that contains the documentation of the worst thing he has ever had to tell a client. At 3:04 p.m., Leonard Sachs arrives. Leonard Sachs is 44 years old. He is a compact man, professionally dressed. He is always professionally dressed. It is part of the specific self-presentation of a man who has built his credibility on an appearance of financial competence and rectitude. He has been Sinatra's financial manager for 4 years. He has been, in that time, present at dinners and private events, has been trusted with information that goes beyond the professional, has been a person who moved through Frank Sinatra's world not as an employee, but as something closer to a colleague. He walks into the conference room and he sees Frank Sinatra and Martin Green and Milton Rudin. He understands immediately. The thing about Leonard Sachs, the thing that makes what happens next possible, is that he is intelligent. He is not a stupid man who made a stupid mistake. He is an intelligent man who made an intelligent mistake, which is to say he made the mistake with full comprehension of what he was doing, over a sustained period, in a way that required genuine skill to execute. He is the kind of man who, when he understands that he has been caught, understands it completely and without the comfort of disbelief. He sits down. He does not say anything. He looks at Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra looks at Leonard Sachs for exactly 4 seconds. 4 seconds is a long time. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then Sinatra opens the folder in front of him, the preliminary summary that Martin Green has prepared. 26 pages, every transaction, every routing, every account, and he sets it on the table in front of Leonard Sachs. "I'm going to give you 36 minutes, Sinatra says. At the end of 36 minutes, you're going to make a decision." Sachs looks at the folder. He does not open it. "What kind of decision?" "I'll tell you in 35 minutes, Sinatra says. He looks at his watch. The 36 minutes begin. The 36 minutes are not what Leonard Sachs expects. He expects, perhaps, rage. He expects the specific confrontation of a man who has been robbed and who wants to express that, loudly, forcefully, in the language of the violated. He expects threats. He expects Milton Rudin to lay out legal proceedings. He expects the kind of room where the injured party makes clear, at high temperature, the extent of the damage. He does not expect what actually happens. What actually happens is this. For the first 17 minutes, Frank Sinatra talks. Not about the money, not about the theft, not about consequences or legal proceedings or what happens next. He talks about the architecture. He talks calmly, technically, with the specific fluency of a man who has spent the past 5 hours on an aeroplane and in a car thinking about this, about the structure of Leonard Sachs's embezzlement, about the elegance of it, about the specific intelligence required to build, inside an existing financial architecture, a parallel structure that moves money without disturbing the surface appearance of the primary architecture. He talks about Pacific Meridian Holdings, the shell company, its structure, its registered agent in Nevada, the specific way it was positioned in the transaction chain to receive funds before they moved to the Bahamian account. He talks about the distribution of transactions, the way Sachs spread them across fiscal quarters to stay below internal review thresholds, the specific calibration of amounts that avoided triggering the automatic flagging protocols in Green, Holloway and Associates audit software. He talks about the timing, the way Sachs always moved the largest amounts in the weeks immediately following a major Reprise Records release, when the transaction volume was highest and individual line items were least likely to receive scrutiny. Leonard Sachs sits across the table and listens to Frank Sinatra describe his own work back to him. Precisely, completely, without error. "You're very good at this," Sinatra says. "I want you to know I understand that." Sachs says nothing. His face is doing something complicated. "The Bahamian account," Sinatra continues. "Bank of New Providence. Account number ending in 7741, opened in the name of Pacific Meridian Holdings, signatory Carolyn DeVito." Sachs is very still. "The account currently holds, as of this morning, approximately $1,400,000. The remainder has been distributed through 3 secondary accounts, 2 of which are in California and 1 of which is in a name I haven't identified yet. Nathan Sabin will have the full picture by 5 o'clock. Leonard Sachs looks at Frank Sinatra. He says, "You had 5 hours. I had the flight and the car," Sinatra says, "and Martin's preliminary work. And Nathan," a pause, "you're going to prosecute." "I haven't decided what I'm going to do," Sinatra says. "That's what the next 19 minutes are for." Minutes 18 through 27. At the 18-minute mark, Sinatra stops talking about the architecture. He opens a second folder. He places 6 documents on the table, fanned out like a hand of cards. These are the documents that Nathan Sabin's team is completing as we sit here. By 5 p.m. they will be affidavits, formatted for federal submission. They establish fraudulent financial management, breach of fiduciary duty, wire fraud across state lines because the Bahamian routing makes it international, and tax evasion on the concealed income. Rudin, besides Sinatra, says nothing. He is there to be present, not to speak. His presence is the presence of the legal architecture, the reminder that what Sinatra is describing is not merely a threat, but a mechanism that is already in motion. Wire fraud is federal, Sinatra continues. The international component adds jurisdictional dimensions that make bail complex. The IRS component adds a separate track that will run parallel to the criminal proceeding. He pauses. "Leonard," he says, "I want to tell you what happens if I file these affidavits." Sachs says, "I can imagine." "I don't think you can. I've been imagining it since 9:47 this morning, and I want to make sure you have the full picture." He goes through it. Not with cruelty, not with the relish of a man who enjoys describing someone's destruction. With the specific, dispassionate precision of a man who has spent 6 hours thinking about a problem and wants to present the solution completely. What happens if Sinatra files the affidavits? The federal wire fraud charge carries a maximum 20-year sentence. The IRS case, which will run separately, adds potential penalties that could reach, in aggregate, 2 to 3 times the original amount taken. Leonard Sachs's professional licenses will be revoked permanently. Pacific Meridian Holdings will be dissolved by court order and its assets seized. The Bahamian account will be frozen through international legal cooperation, which is slower but inevitable. Carolyn DeVito, as a named signatory, will be investigated and potentially charged as a co-conspirator. Carolyn, Sachs says, It is the first word he has spoken in 11 minutes. Yes, Sinatra says. Carolyn. A silence. She didn't know, Sachs says. Sinatra looks at him. Didn't she? She didn't know where the money came from. I told her it was investments. She didn't ask. Then her attorney will make that argument, Sinatra says, and a jury will decide whether they believe it. The silence that follows is a different quality of silence. It is the silence of a man who has just discovered that the person he was trying to protect is inside the perimeter of what he is being threatened with. Minutes 28 through 35. Here is the other path, Sinatra says. He places one more document on the table. It is not a legal document. It is a one-page letter, handwritten, on plain paper. It is short. I wrote this on the plane, he says. The letter is a full confession, a complete, detailed, signed admission of everything Leonard Sachs has done, in his own words, formatted as a sworn statement. It covers every transaction, every account, every routing, every amount. You're going to sign this, Sinatra says. In front of Milton, who will notarize it, Martin will witness it. And then, Sachs says, and then you're going to give me access to the Bahamian account today, and you're going to sign over Pacific Meridian Holdings to Milton's firm, which will liquidate it. And you're going to give Nathan Sabin the account information for the 3 secondary accounts so he can complete the documentation. And then, Sachs says again. And then, Sinatra says, you're going to understand something. He looks at Sachs across the table. He looks at him the way he looked at him when Sachs walked in, with the absolute unhurried attention of a man who is seeing something completely. You're not going to work as a financial manager again, not in this industry, not in any industry where reputation is currency. The signed confession goes to Milton's safe. It stays there. It is not filed unless you give me a reason to file it. And if I don't sign, then we file the affidavits today, and the IRS filing goes in Monday morning, and Carolyn DeVito gets a visit from the FBI before the end of the week. Silence. Leonard, Sinatra says, you have $4 million in the entertainment industry. Your relationships, your professional credibility, your ability to work in any context where financial integrity is a prerequisite, that is what you have. A pause. Sign the letter and you keep those relationships, because the letter stays in a safe and nobody hears about this. Walk out of here without signing, and I file today and you have nothing, because a federal wire fraud conviction makes you, professionally, a zero. You're letting me go, Sachs says. It is not quite a question. I'm letting you go broke, Sinatra says. Those are different things. 3:36 p.m. Conference Room B, Beverly Hills Hotel. Leonard Sachs picks up the pen. He signs the letter. He does it in 3 movements. The signature of a man who has made a decision and is executing it cleanly, without ceremony, because ceremony would require him to believe there is something here that deserves ceremony. Milton Rudine notarizes it. Martin Green witnesses it. Sinatra slides the access documentation across the table, the forms for the Bahamian account, the Pacific Meridian Holdings transfer documents. Sachs fills them in. He gives Nathan Sabin's contact information, the 3 secondary account numbers. He does this without being asked a second time. He does it with the efficiency of a man who has decided that efficiency is the only thing left available to him. At 3:38 p.m., Leonard Sachs stands up. He looks at Frank Sinatra. The money, he says, the full amount. You'll get it back, most of it, Sinatra says. Nathan will tell me by 5 how much is recoverable. I'm sorry, Sachs says. Sinatra looks at him. No, you're not, he says. Not cruelly, factually. You're sorry you got caught. That's a different thing. Sachs nods. It is the nod of a man accepting a distinction he knows is accurate. Leonard, Sinatra says. One more thing. Sachs waits. Carolyn, she's out of it. She cooperates with Nathan on the account information and she's out of it completely. Her name is not in anything that goes public. Sachs looks at him. For the first time in the 36 minutes, something in his expression moves towards something other than calculation. Why? Because she didn't steal from me, Sinatra says. You did. He picks up his folder. He looks at Milton Rudin. Call me at 5 when Nathan has the full accounting. He stands. He picks up his hat. He walks to the door. He opens it. He does not look back. 5:02 p.m., March 14th, 1958. Nathan Sabin calls with the full accounting of the $2,140,000. $1,680,000 is recoverable through the Bahamian account, Pacific Meridian Holdings, and the 3 secondary accounts. The remaining $460,000 has been spent in the irreversible way that money can be spent on things that do not return. Sinatra listens to the numbers. He thanks Nathan Sabin. He tells Martin Green to coordinate with Nathan on the recovery process. He tells Milton Rudin to have the signed confession secured in the firm's vault. Then he makes one more call. He calls a man named George Jacobs, who is his personal valet and one of the people closest to him. He tells Jacobs where he is and asks him to bring a change of clothes to the Beverly Hills hotel. He has a dinner this evening that he has not cancelled. He does not cancel engagements. At 7 p.m., Frank Sinatra attends dinner at Chasen's restaurant with 4 people who have nothing to do with this story. He is on time. He is charming. He orders the chili, which is what he always orders at Chasen's. He tells a story about a recording session that makes the table laugh. He does not mention the conference room. He does not mention Leonard Sachs. He does not mention $2 million. He goes home at 10:30. He has a glass of Jack Daniels. He sits in the quiet of his living room and he thinks about the day. He is thinking about the $460,000 that is not coming back. Not with grief. Grief is not the right word for what he feels about money. With the specific acknowledgement that some losses are permanent and permanent losses require acknowledgement before you can set them down. He thinks about Leonard Sachs, who is, right now, at 10:30 p.m., somewhere in Los Angeles, probably not sleeping, probably doing the accounting that Sachs himself is so good at, the accounting of what he has lost, what he still has, what comes next. Whether the confession in the safe is more or less dangerous than the alternative, whether the terms Sinatra offered are terms he can build something within. He thinks about Carolyn DeVito, who does not know tonight that a man she trusts has placed her inside a legal exposure that was removed this afternoon by a person she has never met. He thinks about the signed letter in Milton Rudin's safe. He is not thinking about power. He is not thinking about what the 36 minutes demonstrated about his position or his capability or his standing. He is thinking about the specific thing he said to Leonard Sachs. You're going to go broke, not destroyed, not imprisoned, not publicly humiliated. Not the kind of elimination that leaves a person without anything. Simply broke, without the ability to do, professionally, the thing he was best at, without the specific currency, financial credibility, professional trust that makes a person in his position viable. This is what Sinatra meant by letting you go broke, not penniless, without the thing that made you dangerous, the signed confession in Milton Rudin's safe. This is what the 36 minutes were actually about, not the recovery of the money, though the money was important, and recovering $1,680,000 of it was a significant outcome. Not the legal leverage, though the legal leverage was real, and Sachs had signed it, and it was in Rudin's safe. The 36 minutes were about the safe itself. The safe is not a threat. It is not a sword held over Leonard Sachs's head, requiring constant maintenance, requiring Sinatra to periodically remind Sachs that the sword exists, requiring the ongoing expenditure of attention and energy that all sustained threats require. The safe is simply a fact. Leonard Sachs knows the confession is in there. He will spend the rest of his professional life knowing it is in there. He will make every subsequent professional decision with the awareness that a signed, notarized, witnessed full confession of federal wire fraud exists in a law firm's vault in Beverly Hills, available for filing at any time, for any reason, at the sole discretion of Frank Sinatra. This means Leonard Sachs will never, not once, not in any form, not in any medium, do anything that creates a problem for Frank Sinatra or Frank Sinatra's interests. Not because Sinatra will be watching, because Sachs will be watching himself. The safe has converted a dangerous man into a self-monitoring instrument. This is the most efficient possible outcome, not destruction. Destruction requires ongoing energy, and destroyed people are unpredictable in their desperation. Not ongoing confrontation. Confrontation is expensive and exhausting and visible. Simply, a fact that Sachs lives with, that requires no maintenance from Sinatra, that operates continuously and permanently without any additional investment of Sinatra's attention. Real power is not what you take from a room, it is what you leave in it. What Sinatra left in Leonard Sachs' professional world was the safe. The safe is not in Leonard Sachs' world physically, it is in Milton Rudin's office. But it is present in Leonard Sachs's world completely, present in every professional decision, every new engagement, every moment when the temptation to do again what he did before might arise. The safe contains the only piece of paper Sinatra needed to produce, and having produced it and secured it, he walked out of the room. He did not need to stay, he did not need to watch, he did not need to maintain the threat. He needed only to be the kind of person who, when told that $2 million had been stolen from him by someone he trusted, spent 6 hours on a plane and in a car converting shock into architecture, walked into a conference room at 3 p.m. and spent 36 minutes disassembling the problem with mathematical precision before walking out to dinner. There are things about this story that are worth knowing in full. The recovery. Nathan Sabin completed his forensic accounting by 5:30 p.m. on March 14th. The full recovery process, working through the Bahamian Bank and the California accounts, took 11 weeks and recovered $1,712,000, slightly more than Sabin's initial estimate, because a secondary account had received a partial distribution that Sabin identified in his more complete review. The remaining $428,000 was irrecoverable. Leonard Sachs. He did not work as a financial manager again. He spent the following years in a series of smaller commercial roles, bookkeeping for small businesses, tax preparation, consulting work for companies too small to have heard of him. He lived in the San Fernando Valley. He was not destitute. He was, as Sinatra had promised, professionally finished in any context where the memory of the entertainment industry reached. Carolyn DeVito. She was never contacted by federal investigators. She was never named in any proceeding. She received, one morning in June 1958, a letter from a law firm in Beverly Hills informing her that the Pacific Meridian Holdings account had been closed and its contents transferred to the account's beneficial owner. The letter was brief. It did not explain what Pacific Meridian Holdings was. She called Leonard Sachs. He explained, partially, what had happened. She left him 3 months later. The signed confession. It remained in Milton Rudin's safe. It was never filed. It was never used. It sat in the safe for 23 years, through the rest of Sinatra's career, through his retirement and return, through the recordings of the 1960s and 70s, through 2 marriages and their endings, through the concerts and the benefit performances and the Oscar ceremonies and the presidential medals, until Milton Rudin died in 1981, at which point the safe's contents were inventoried and the confession was found and transferred, per Rudin's instructions, to Sinatra's personal archive. It was, as far as anyone knows, never read again after March 14, 1958. It simply existed. It did its work by existing. Martin Green. He continued as Sinatra's accounting firm's primary partner on the Sinatra accounts until his retirement in 1972. He implemented, at Sinatra's request, in the months following March 1958, a series of internal financial controls, transaction review thresholds, dual authorization requirements, quarterly reconciliation protocols that made a repetition of what Sachs had done structurally impossible. These controls added operational friction to the daily management of the financial architecture. They were worth it. Frank Sinatra. He lost $428,000 that were not recovered. He does not appear to have dwelt on this loss publicly or, from available accounts, privately. He spent the remaining months of 1958 recording some of the finest work of his career. Frank Sinatra Sings for Only the Lonely was released in September 1958 and is considered, by many people who care about these things, to be the most complete artistic statement he ever made. He won the Grammy Award for Best Album of the Year for it in 1959. The 36 minutes appear to have had no lasting effect on his creative output, which is consistent with what he said to Leonard Sachs when Sachs apologized. "You're sorry you got caught. Not I forgive you. Not this hurt me. Not this changes me. Simply an accurate assessment of what was real." People who know this story, and very few people know it fully, because it was not the kind of story that Sinatra told in interviews, and the people who were present kept it as the professional confidence it was meant to be. People who know it tend to focus on the drama of it. The confrontation in the conference room, the 36 minutes, the signed confession, they miss what the story is actually about. The story is about the difference between punishment and containment. Punishment is what the conventional narrative of betrayal requires. Someone steals from you, humiliates your trust, exposes the specific vulnerability of having believed in a person who was not what you believed. The conventional response is punishment, criminal prosecution, public exposure. The full mechanical weight of the system brought to bear, visibly, in a way that demonstrates to everyone who might consider doing the same thing what the consequences are. Punishment has its logic. It is not wrong exactly. It is simply expensive. Expensive in time, in attention, in the ongoing energy required to pursue a criminal proceeding. Expensive in the visibility that makes everything about your loss public and documented. Expensive in the way that every court date and legal filing keeps you connected to the person who wronged you, keeps the wound open, keeps the energy of the situation in your life rather than in the past where you need it to be. Containment is different. Containment says the threat ends here, not because you have destroyed it. Destruction is a specific kind of violence, and violence, even legal violence, has its own costs. Containment says you no longer have the capacity to do this again, in this world, in any meaningful way, because I hold the fact of what you did, and you know I hold it, and that knowledge will govern your behavior from this point forward without requiring any additional investment from me. Containment is more efficient than punishment. It is also, in a precise moral sense, more honest, because punishment tends to be, at its core, about the punisher's need to be seen punishing, about demonstrating power, about making the moment of consequence visible enough to serve as theater. Frank Sinatra, in Conference Room B at the Beverly Hills Hotel on March 14, 1958, was not interested in theater. He was interested in resolution. He was interested in recovering as much of the money as possible, neutralizing the ongoing threat, and returning to his actual life, which, on that particular evening, included a dinner at Chasen's and, over the following months, the recording of an album that would change what people understood about what music could be. The 36 minutes were the minimum time required to do the thing correctly. Not 35 minutes. 35 minutes would have been rushing, and rushing in a situation like this produces outcomes that require maintenance. Not 45 minutes. 45 minutes would have been indulgence, would have been allowing the emotional weight of the situation to expand into more time than the situation required. 36 minutes, exactly long enough to be complete. Perfection is not when there is nothing more to add. It is when there is nothing left to take away. He did not say this. He probably never heard it attributed, as it usually is, to Saint-Exupéry, but it describes what he did in that conference room with the precision that mathematics describes physical facts. The 36 minutes were exactly as long as they needed to be, and no longer. $2,140,000, over 26 months, by a man who was trusted. The betrayal has a specific shape when you examine it honestly. It is not the shape of simple greed, the simple greed of a man who sees money and takes it. It has a more complicated shape. It is the shape of a man who knows a system completely, who has been given access to that system based on trust, and who uses the knowledge and access to take something that the trust made available. This is the specific danger of the insider, not the external threat. External threats are visible. They announce themselves through their approach. They can be watched for and defended against. The insider threat is invisible because it wears the uniform of trust. It moves through your defenses because your defenses were not designed to stop it. because the defenses were designed to protect against outsiders, and insiders are, definitionally, already inside. Frank Sinatra, in the months after March 1958, implemented the financial controls that Martin Green recommended. But he also did something that no financial control can fully address. He spent time, in the following years, thinking about the nature of the access he granted and the terms on which he granted it. He did not become paranoid. Paranoia is expensive and self-defeating, and Sinatra was, throughout his life, a man who built genuine trust with genuine people and who was correct far more often than he was wrong. The Leonard Sachs situation was an exception, not a pattern. But he did become more precise, more architectural, more attentive to the specific design of trust, to the question of what access does this person need to do their job, rather than the simpler question of does this person seem trustworthy. Seeming trustworthy and being trustworthy are different specifications. Leonard Sachs seemed trustworthy because he was good at his job and because the systems around him were designed for competence rather than integrity. What the 36 minutes established was a new specification. The system was redesigned after March 1958 so that seeming trustworthy was not sufficient access. The system required structural controls, dual authorization, independent review, separation of functions that made integrity a requirement of the architecture rather than an assumption about the individual. This is not cynicism. This is the specific wisdom that comes from having been wrong once about something important, and having thought carefully about why you were wrong, and having changed the things that allowed the wrongness to persist. "I've always believed in giving people trust," Sinatra said in an interview in 1960, in a context that had nothing to do with this story. But trust isn't the same as taking your eyes off the road. You trust the other drivers. You also watch where you're going. He was not talking about Leonard Sachs. He was talking about driving, but the principle is the same. There are people who will tell you that this story is about revenge. They will say Sinatra was robbed, and he extracted revenge, and the revenge was elegant and cold and complete, and that is why the story matters. They are wrong. This story is not about revenge. Revenge is satisfied by suffering. It requires the wrongdoer to experience pain, to be visibly diminished, to carry in their body and their circumstances some proportionate echo of the pain they caused. Revenge needs the wrongdoer to know that the wronged party made them suffer. It is, at its core, a communication from the injured to the injurer. You hurt me, and so I hurt you back, and now you know what I can do. What Sinatra did in 36 minutes was not revenge. Sachs did not suffer. He was not imprisoned. He was not publicly humiliated. He was not destroyed. He walked out of a conference room at 3:38 p.m. and went somewhere in Los Angeles and lived his life, reduced, professionally circumscribed, permanently aware of the safe in Beverly Hills, but alive and uncaged and not broken. What Sinatra did was correction. Correction says, you introduced something wrong into a system, and I have corrected it. The correction is complete. The system has been restored, to the extent it can be restored, and the mechanism that allowed the wrongness to persist has been removed. This is done now. Correction requires no ongoing maintenance. Revenge requires ongoing maintenance. The resentment, the monitoring, the satisfaction in the other person's suffering, the specific energy expenditure of keeping the wound open. Correction closes the wound. It does not heal it. The $428,000 that was not recovered, and the specific injury of having trusted someone who was not what he seemed is a permanent modification to the person who trusted them. But it closes the wound. It stops the bleeding. It allows you to go to dinner at 7 p.m. and order the chili and tell a story that makes the table laugh. This is what Frank Sinatra understood at 42 years old in 1958. In a way that many people never understand in a lifetime. The goal is not to punish the person who wronged you. The goal is to be finished with it. 36 minutes to be finished with it. After that, dinner, the chili, the story, the table laughing. After that, the recording studio, Nelson Riddle, the orchestra. The music that came from the year that contained this and everything else. The losses and the wrongness, and the $428,000, and the specific texture of a man who has been lied to by someone he trusted and who has sat with that knowledge and converted it, through the specific alchemy of 42 years of life, into something that sounds like Only the Lonely. The music is not about Leonard Sachs. It was never about Leonard Sachs. It is about the full human experience of a year that contained many things, including a conference room at 3 p.m. on a March afternoon where a man spent 36 minutes doing what needed to be done and then walked out the door. Real power is not what you take from a room. It is what you leave in it. He left a signed confession and a cleaned architectural record and a set of financial controls that would prevent it from happening again. He took the $428,000 that was gone. He did not take Leonard Sachs' life, Leonard Sachs' freedom, Carolyn DeVito's future, or 1 minute more of his own time than the situation required. He left the conference room at 3:38 p.m. He had dinner at 7. He was, by 9 o'clock, thinking about the music.